Well, John Z. DeLorean was a very strong and nice personality, in my opinion. Of course, we all know about his problems, say, with the justice, but I have my own theory. I don't know if you have time and space to talk about that as well. It will be interesting. But if we stay from the design point of view, I was no longer with Ital Design when the project started under Giugiaro, but I somewhat had my own saying in that, because I met Giorgio shortly before leaving Ital Design on good terms. And eventually he asked me if I would consult him in making the choice about the best company that would do the job for him. At the time he was calling the project DeLorean Safety Car. The concept were there, it was quite well defined. And of course I accepted. We were considering at the time 3 Turinese companies. In alphabetical order, I would say Bertone, Ital Design, and Pininfarina. And I know it may be suspected that eventually I suggested DeLorean to do the design work with Giugiaro. But I did it with a very professional approach, and not because I was working with him just until a few days earlier. We were good friends, with good terms. But on a very rational matters. I explained that, of course, all companies were delivering the right car to him, but the process would have been different. And the experience that the company had in the technology and technical approach to build the car was much more common, familiar to Ital Design than the other ones. And I will explain you this in a moment. But the very other big advantage that I saw in this personal relation is that we had 2 men, 2 leaders talking directly, not committee, not meet someone in the media. DeLorean would be able to talk to the designer, not to the general manager, not to the owner of the company. If he had gone to Bertone, he would have to talk to Bertone rather than to the designer who was working there. Same with Pininfarina. With Ital Design, they would talk directly. And the other very influential factor is that Ital Design just came from the experience of the Lotus Esprit project that was applying the same technique and technology that DeLorean would apply. That is a bearing chassis, a one-piece mold of fiberglass bodywork, or fiberglass or composite, and the difference was in the skin. But the skin of the DeLorean was laminated still, with the Lotus was just polyester or fiberglass. But the technique, the technology was very, very similar. And also the production volume was very similar. So Ital Design was experienced, could do the engineering for a limited production car for DeLorean, and so on and so forth. So DeLorean eventually opted for Ital Design Giugiaro, and they did the MC-12, which everybody knows around the world, maybe for its design, but primarily for the movie Back to the Future. Hollywood sometimes is more successful than Turin in that respect. DeLorean, I had also other experience. I've been being his consultant on a few other projects. One interesting project that did not go through was he wanted to build a small little cars inspired to the Sabio Jungla. Today would be a panda, an original panda, for Puerto Rico. Indeed, From the first contact I had with him at Italy Design, I think around 1974, I'm not an historian, so I could go back and say, but this is not important. It took several years for DeLorean to implement in project, probably 10 years or so. And in the meantime, he was looking for government to support him, to finance his project, and he has been looking in different locations, including Puerto Rico, I remember that. And also another anecdote that a few people knows, DeLorean also wanted to look into the acquisition of Lamborghini at one time. Lamborghini, at the important time, was in liquidation and could have been bought for a very reasonable amount of money. Paying the price was not the issue. The issue would be how much do you have to invest to revamp, to create to relaunch the Lamborghini. And I remember we visited the professional in charge of this liquidation in Bologna on a Saturday morning. He was flying in this part of the world, and he asked me to arrange the meeting. We went to the meeting, and he asked whether I could rent an helicopter for him to go to Bologna and back. It was just too expensive, so I had to drive him. And on the way back, it was a really big rush in an Alfa Romeo Coupe that I had been given for a test drive. So this is about DeLorean. So the way it all ended up matches with the character, the personality of the man. But there's a lot to do with politics, in my opinion. DeLorean pushed a bit too much, maybe his leg, pushing the government to finance again and again. And at one point in time, it was a big embarrassment for the government with a lot of question time in the parliament. So I think the British government asked their American friend to give them a hand, and they'll sort out the problem, which apparently is what they did. Of course, I do not know the detail, the inside story. This has to do with FBI and other issues, not my job. But from here, we will go to the next step, and that will be Colin Chapman and Lotus. When creative people, entrepreneurs, talk to each other, person to person, everything becomes easier and faster. And it is not by coincidence that eventually Giugiaro designed the car also for DeLorean, and DeLorean asked Colin Chapman to engineer his car. In fact, Lotus developed their own division, engineering development division, primarily to design the tooling, to do the entire development of the DeLorean motor car. And from that also developed a certain scandal, I would say. It was not very quiet. With both Colin Chapman and DeLorean being investigated on their deal. The story ended with the disappearance of Colin Chapman. Sudden, unexpected, suspicious, I would say. For what I knew, Colin Chapman, I would expect anything from him. There was this investigation going on. And years later, I asked Michael Kimberley his opinion about the disappearance of Colin Chapman. And he told me some facts. Just the facts. Nobody saw Colin Chapman then. Only the legal doctor who came from another area of the United Kingdom saw him. Everything was done very quickly, and it disappeared. I like to dream, to think, that he went to spend his last days in Brazil or some of those paradises and have some fun. But this is just a fantasy.